Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 10 of my little big year, and it continues to be a good summer for birding here on my home patch. Normally the summertime is pretty slow, but this summer I have been able to find and photograph birds at a pretty good pace, so I'm back with another video. An interesting recent development is that due to low rainfall over the past few months, the water level has receded, opening up some mudflats, and this has started to attract a lot of shorebirds to my home patch. So fortunately for me and for my little big year, I'm now going to pick up about 3 to 5 additional shorebird species that I normally wouldn't get. In addition, there's always the exciting possibility that a really unusual shorebird will show up. So we'll see what happens. So I've just arrived here at my home patch, but before we go and take a look at that mud that I'm so excited about, I need to make a little correction to my little big year list. In the previous episode, I added belted kingfisher to the list, but I forgot to increment the count number, so essentially I didn't add it. So we're just going to add that to the list right now as we get started, and fortunately, a few days ago I actually got some better footage of a pair of belted kingfishers, so it's actually improved over what I had in the previous video, so that kind of worked out well. This is a male kingfisher. You can see he has a blue breast band and there's no red on the bird at all. And this is a female kingfisher. You can see that she has both blue and red breast bands and some red running down the sides as well. So that's number 109 for our little big year list, and just as a reminder, my target for the end of the year is 125 species photographed here on my home patch. So here's some footage of a mudflat that opened up about 2 weeks ago. This area is what we call the garden lagoon because it's right next to the community garden. This end here is very shallow, so once the water level went down, the mud appeared right away, and then a few days later we started seeing least sandpipers feeding out there. As with all migrating birds, they really need to eat all day long in order to fuel their long overnight flights. Another new shorebird species attracted by the low water level is this lesser yellowlegs. Despite the name lesser, it's actually a rather elegant and large shorebird and always very enjoyable to watch. Okay, getting away from the mud temporarily here, the next bird is this great egret perched up in a tree. These are actually really beautiful birds and rather uncommon on my home patch, so another really good addition to the list. Next up is a bird that's common all summer on my home patch, but which is very difficult to photograph, and that's this eastern wood pewee. I hear their distinctive whistled call all the time when I'm walking through the woods, but I rarely get more than a glimpse of them flitting in the treetops. This time I finally did get a good photo opportunity when a family of pewees came down and spent some time on some lower branches. You can hear some of their calls in the background. Coming back now to the mudflat, we also had a greater yellowlegs show up. Greater and lesser yellowlegs are notoriously difficult to tell apart because their appearance is really identical other than the size. In this next clip here, the greater yellowlegs passes right next to a lesser yellowlegs, and so I'll freeze the video so you can see the size difference when they're side by side. That's the greater yellowlegs on the right and the lesser yellowlegs on the left. Another nice development here over the past few weeks is that we've started to see barred owls again. It seems that the barred owls didn't nest here this year like they usually do, but now we have a family that's being seen pretty regularly, so it's likely that they nested somewhere nearby. There's a young owl begging for food somewhere nearby, making a rising, hissing sound that you may be able to hear in the background of this clip. Next up is a bird that's very common everywhere in the East, but is very difficult to photograph, and that is a chimney swift. Chimney swifts are actually pretty amazing birds. They roost overnight in some place like a chimney. They fly out in the morning, and then they fly around all day long without ever landing anywhere, and then they go back into the roost at night. This presents certain challenges for photography, as you can imagine. So this is a pretty typical looking photograph of a chimney swift. They've been described as looking like flying cigars, and usually the photograph comes out looking pretty much just like a silhouette. I did actually have an opportunity the other day to get some slightly better photos of some chimney swifts. This one swift was flying up to this branch and then kind of pausing in the air, almost like he wanted to try to land on it. But for just a moment, he was slowing down, and I could kind of anticipate where he was going to be. So with a high shutter speed and a lot of cropping, I was able to get these images that show some feather detail of the bird, so not too bad. So I'm going to count that on the Little Big Year list, and I'm also going to count that on my channel life list as well. I had a nice surprise a few days ago when a northern water thrush popped out of a bush and gave me a nice close-up look. Northern water thrush is a warbler species, and it's one that I heard singing a lot back in May during spring migration, but I just wasn't ever able really to get any kind of a decent photograph of it. They aren't usually around in the summertime, so it feels good to finally add it to the list. This downy woodpecker found a mother load of little ants coming out of this branch and was paying no attention to the people walking right by on the path. So I have just one more new bird to add to the list in this episode, and that is this pair of ring-billed gulls that I found perched on the roof of this public works building here on my home patch. This is a long overdue addition to the list, as ring-billed gulls are pretty common here at Horn Pond, although less so in summer. Now that I think of it, I also need to add herring gull to the list at some point. So I'm going to wrap this episode up here. I hope you can still hear me over the rain. We are getting pretty close to our target of 125 species by the end of the year, and the way things have been going, I'm actually pretty optimistic that we're going to exceed that target. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you next time.